In that moment, as if time had slowed down for a few seconds, the entire city seemed to pause to listen to the most anticipated storytelling moment on YouTube. Starting now. Letters of Life. I never imagined that a single day could shatter everything I believed about my past, and rebuild everything I hoped for in my future. But life has a cruel way of surprising us. Sometimes with pain. Sometimes with healing. And sometimes, with both at the same time. The morning of my ex-husband's funeral began like a slow, suffocating nightmare. The kind you try to wake up from, but can't. His name was Roger Miller. We had been separated for 5 months, months that felt like an eternity and yet, somehow, like a single breath gone wrong. Our marriage had ended not with a fight, but with a wound that never fully stopped bleeding. He had betrayed me. Cheated. Lied. And still, seeing his name in an obituary felt like stepping into a world where nothing made sense anymore. I wasn't there as a grieving widow. I wasn't there as the woman he loved, because he had stopped loving me long before the papers were signed. But I was there as the mother of his child. And for that alone, I needed to be strong. My daughter, Emily, stood beside me, her small fingers woven desperately around mine. She was only 8 years old. Too young to understand betrayal. Just old enough to understand loss. Her voice was barely a whisper as we approached the funeral home entrance. "Mom, is Daddy really gone?" I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "Yes, sweetheart. He is." Inside, the air felt thick, heavy with perfume, lilies, murmurs, and the quiet tension of people pretending to care more than they truly did. I recognized faces from a life I no longer lived. Neighbors. Former friends. People who had disappeared the moment my marriage crumbled. But the worst part, the part that twisted inside me like a knife, was seeing her. The mistress. Her name was Samantha Clark, though in quiet conversations I used to call her something far less graceful. Today, she wore a luxurious black dress, her blonde hair cascading in soft waves, her makeup flawless, as if she had been preparing for this moment. As if she were the grieving widow. And to my disgust, many of our old friends were consoling her. Hugging her. Rubbing her back as if she were the one who had been wronged. As if I were the outsider. My jaw tightened. My chest burned. But I reminded myself, I wasn't here for her. I wasn't here for them. I was here for my daughter. Emily clung to my waist, hiding her face when people tried to approach us. The room buzzed with whispers, whispers that crawled over my skin. "That's his ex-wife. Heard he cheated on her. The mistress is devastated. Poor woman. I heard Olivia kicked him out." I kept my chin up, but inside, my heart trembled. We approached the casket. Roger lay there, pale, still, unrecognizable beneath makeup and tragedy. I felt nothing at first. No anger. No love. No sorrow. Just a hollow ache I couldn't name. Emily cried softly beside me. I stroked her hair and whispered, "It's okay, let it out." But I couldn't let anything out. Not yet. Hours passed in slow motion. Every fake sympathy felt like a slap. Every glance from the mistress felt like a challenge. Every memory of my marriage twisted itself into a knot around my lungs. Finally, unable to breathe, I stepped outside. I needed air. I needed space. I needed anything other than the suffocating presence of that room. The wind outside was cool, brushing against my face with a faint gentleness that felt foreign after so much heaviness. I closed my eyes, letting the breeze steady me. That's when a voice broke through the silence. "Hi, excuse me. Are you Olivia? Olivia Miller?" I opened my eyes and turned around. Standing a few feet away was a tall man, broad-shouldered, calm, composed. He looked to be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. His short dark hair was slightly tousled by the wind, and his eyes held something I had not seen in a long time. Sincerity. He stepped forward politely, his hands visible, almost as if he were afraid of startling me. "Yes," I said cautiously. "I'm Olivia." "And you are?" He extended his hand in a soft, respectful gesture. "My name is Walter Barnes. I was a friend of Roger's." I blinked, confused. I knew most of Roger's friends. The ones from work. The ones from the bar. The ones he lied to when he disappeared for nights at a time. But I had never seen this man. "I'm sorry," I said, hesitating. "I don't think we've ever met." He smiled, gently, understandingly. "No, we haven't. Roger and I met a couple of years ago at a business event. We stayed in touch, mostly through calls and messages. I didn't know him as long as many people here, but we talked. About life. About mistakes. About regrets. Regrets." The word stung. Walter's face softened as he continued. "He talked about you, Olivia." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "He told me he wished he could take things back. That he'd made choices he couldn't fix. That he hurt you, deeply, and that he didn't deserve forgiveness, but he hoped life would bring you peace one day." My breath caught. My heart stumbled. I didn't know whether to believe him, or to shut down. But something in his tone, honest, steady, felt real. "Well," I managed to say, "I was the one who asked him to leave. I couldn't stay once I knew about the affair." Walter nodded slowly, respectfully. "And you had every right to. Anyone would have." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind carried faint sounds from the funeral home, muffled sobs, quiet conversations, the distant hum of cars passing by. Then Walter spoke again, softer this time. "I'm sorry for everything you've gone through. Truly." There was something in his expression, something compassionate, grounded, that made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Why should a stranger's kindness shake me more than the words of the people inside? Before I could respond, someone called people back inside for the final moments of the service. Walter offered me a small nod. "Take care, Olivia. I'm really glad I got to meet you." And then he walked away. We went back inside for the final part of the service. The air felt even heavier than before, as if the walls had absorbed every whispered word, every resentment, every fake tear. I took Emily's hand again and led her toward the front rows, where close family was supposed to sit. Close family. The phrase tasted bitter. We weren't together anymore, and yet I had once shared a home, a life, a name with the man in that casket. Where exactly did that place me now? As we approached, I saw Margaret, my former mother-in-law. She had always been kind to me, even when things were falling apart. Her eyes were swollen and red, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a handkerchief. "Olivia," she whispered when she saw me. For a moment, I feared anger. Blame. Accusation. But instead, she stood and pulled me into a shaky embrace. "I'm so glad you came," she murmured into my ear. "Thank you, for bringing Emily." Emotion swelled in my chest. "I'm so sorry for your loss," I managed. "For everything." She squeezed my hand. "The loss is yours too," she said softly. "No matter what happened. You were part of his life. You gave him our Emily. I'll never forget that." Her words cracked something inside me. I nodded, unable to speak. Then I felt it, a sharp glance burning into the side of my face. I didn't need to look to know who it was. Samantha. She stood a few meters away, surrounded by a small cluster of people. One of Roger's co-workers had an arm around her shoulders. Another held a box of tissues for her. She dabbed delicately at her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara. Her eyes met mine briefly. There was no apology in them. No guilt. Just ownership. As if she were silently saying, "He chose me. I won." I looked away. The pastor began speaking, some generic words about life being fragile, about forgiveness, about the mystery of death. I heard every word and none of them at the same time. As he talked, the memories came. Roger laughing in the kitchen, flour on his nose while we baked cookies with Emily. Roger holding my hand in a hospital hallway when our daughter was born. Roger saying, "You're my forever, Liv." And then Roger coming home late, smelling like a perfume that wasn't mine. Roger's phone lighting up in the dark with messages from S. Roger looking me in the eyes and saying, it was a mistake, it didn't mean anything, when it clearly meant everything. I had thrown him out that night. I had watched him walk away with a duffel bag and a guilty face, and for months afterward I had hated myself for still loving him in the quietest corners of my heart. Now he was gone. No apologies left. No explanations. No second chances. Just a coffin and a room full of strangers deciding what his story meant. "Mom." Emily's small voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" I blinked, quickly wiping a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "I'm fine, baby," I whispered. "I'm right here." She leaned her head against my arm. "I miss him," she said. "Even if he didn't live with us anymore." "I know," I murmured. "It's okay to miss him." As the service ended, people lined up to offer condolences. Some hugged me as if we were still close. Some avoided my eyes, unsure of what place I held now. A few pretended not to notice me at all, as if my presence complicated the narrative they preferred, the tragic lover and the grieving mistress. Samantha approached the front with exaggerated slowness, clutching a folded tissue in her hand. She leaned over the casket, whispered something I couldn't hear, brushed her fingers over his chest, and stepped back with a sob that felt rehearsed. I tried not to look. I tried not to feel anything. But when she turned around, our eyes met again. For a moment it was just the two of us. The wife he betrayed. The woman he chose. She gave me a look I couldn't fully decode, pity, pride, maybe both. Then she walked past me, her perfume following like a ghost. I exhaled slowly, swallowing back the sharp words I wanted to say. Not here. Not today. Not in front of my daughter. After the service. The crowd gradually thinned. People moved toward the exit in clusters, their voices mixing into a low, constant hum. I helped Emily gather her things, a small backpack with colored pencils and a notebook, the crumpled tissue she'd been holding, the little heart-shaped pendant her grandmother had just given her. "Can we go home now?" she asked, her eyes tired. "Yes," I said gently. "We're almost done." As we walked toward the exit, a man blocked my path, not rudely, just unexpectedly. "Olivia?" I looked up. Walter again. He held a small card between his fingers, almost as if he'd been turning it over and over while waiting for me. "Hey," I said softly, surprised to see him again so soon. "I thought you had left." "I was going to," he admitted. "But I wanted to talk to you first." He held out the card. If you need anything, and I mean anything, please call me. I know today is a lot. I know we don't really know each other. But, if you ever feel overwhelmed, or if Emily needs something, or if you just don't want to sit with your thoughts alone, call me. I stared at the card. Walter Barnes, strategic consultant. A phone number. An email. It felt strange to accept something so personal on such a raw day. And yet, something in his eyes made it impossible to refuse. They weren't hungry eyes. Not opportunistic. He looked at me like someone who had seen too much pain in the world and decided, somewhere along the way, that he would not add to it. I reached out and took the card. Thank you, I said quietly. He nodded, then glanced at Emily. She was half hidden behind my arm, staring at him with curious, wary eyes. Walter lowered himself a bit, softening his posture. Hi, Emily, he said gently. I'm Walter. I knew your dad for a little while. He talked about you. Her eyes widened slightly. He did. Yeah, Walter smiled. He said you were really smart. And that you loved drawing and reading. Is that still true? She hesitated, then nodded. Walter's smile warmed. That's pretty amazing. The world needs more smart girls who love books. A tiny spark of pride flashed in her expression. It was the first time I had seen something other than grief in her eyes that day. We should go, I said softly. But, thank you. For being kind. He straightened, hands sliding into his coat pockets. I'm heading to the office for a while, he said. Got a few things to wrap up. But seriously, if you need anything, call. He stepped aside, letting us pass. We walked toward the door, the cool light from outside spilling in. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. The invitation. We were almost at the car when I heard footsteps behind us. Olivia. I turned. Walter was hurrying toward us, his expression a mix of hesitation and determination, as if he'd made a decision mid-step. I'm sorry, he said, slightly out of breath. I don't mean to intrude. I just wanted to ask something before you go. I tightened my hold on Emily's hand. Yes. He scratched the back of his neck, glancing briefly at my daughter before looking back at me. Have you two had lunch yet? The question caught me off guard. No, not yet, I replied cautiously. We were just going to go home. Maybe order something. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. I know this might sound forward, he said carefully. But, would you let me take you both to lunch? Somewhere quiet. Nothing fancy. Just a place where you can sit, breathe, and not think about all of. He gestured vaguely toward the funeral home. This. I promise I'll bring you back right after. My first instinct was to say no. I didn't know this man. I didn't know his intentions. My life had already been complicated enough because of one man's choices. I wasn't about to throw myself into another mess. But then I thought about the way he'd spoken to me. The way he'd spoken to Emily. The way he'd stayed at the funeral until the very end, helped carry the coffin, watched everything quietly instead of inserting himself where he didn't belong. I thought about the way my daughter had laughed for one brief second when he called her smart. Maybe one meal wouldn't hurt. I don't know, I said honestly. It's been a long day. I don't want to bother you. It wouldn't be a bother, he replied quickly. Then, catching himself, he softened his tone. Look, if you're uncomfortable, I completely understand. Really? I just thought, no one should leave a funeral and go home to sit with silence and leftovers. Sometimes, a warm meal in a different place can help. I looked down at Emily. She was staring at him, then at me, then at the ground. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm kinda hungry." That settled it. I exhaled slowly. "All right," I said. "But somewhere simple." Walter's face relaxed with quiet relief. "Of course," he said. "There's a small diner a few blocks away. Good food. Quiet booths. No loud music." "Okay," I nodded. He opened the back door of his car for Emily first, helping her in with a care that made my heart twist. Then he closed the door gently and walked around to the driver's side. I slid into the passenger seat, still half on edge, half strangely calm. As he started the car, he glanced at me. "If at any moment you feel uncomfortable," he said, "just say so, and I'll drive you home. No questions asked." "All right." I met his eyes. There it was again, that solid, unhurried sincerity. "All right," I replied. The engine hummed to life, and we pulled away from the funeral home. For the first time that day, it felt like I was moving towards something unknown, that didn't terrify me. The lunch. The diner looked like something out of a small-town movie. Big windows. Red leather booths. The faint smell of coffee and baked pie hanging in the air. We sat at a booth near the window. Emily slid in next to me, her small body still tense, but less rigid than before. Walter sat across from us, setting his phone face down on the table. A waitress appeared with a tired but friendly smile. "What can I get you folks?" she asked. Emily looked up at me, hesitant. "Whatever you want, honey," I told her. She glanced at the menu, eyes scanning nervously. "Do you like pancakes?" Walter asked her gently. "They make really good ones here." "Or grilled cheese?" "Grilled cheese is a classic." Her lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "Pancakes," she whispered. "Great choice," he said. "3 pancakes, extra syrup," he told the waitress. "And a hot chocolate, if that's okay with Mom." I nodded. "That's fine." "And for you too?" the waitress asked. I ordered something simple. A salad, a coffee. Walter ordered a burger and water. When she left, a brief silence settled over the table. I realized how strange this must look, a grieving ex-wife, her young daughter, and a man who barely knew them, sharing a booth hours after a funeral. But Walter didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it exist without making it awkward. Finally, he spoke. "How are you holding up?" he asked me quietly. I hesitated. The polite answer would be, "I'm okay." The truthful one was far messier. "I don't know," I admitted. "It doesn't feel real yet. Part of me is still angry at him. Another part remembers the man he used to be. And then there's Emily, and I'm just trying to figure out how to help her grieve someone who hurt me but was still her father." Walter nodded slowly, taking in every word. "That's a lot to carry," he said. "Too much for one person, if you ask me." "I don't have much of a choice," I replied with a weak smile. "I'm all she has." "You're more than enough," he said. I looked up, surprised. His tone wasn't flirty. It wasn't performative. It was simply true. The food arrived. Emily's face lit up slightly at the sight of her pancakes and hot chocolate. As she started to eat, Walter gently pulled a small paper napkin toward him and drew a silly little face on it with a pen from his pocket. He slid it across the table to her. She stared at it, then looked at him. "That's you after finishing those pancakes," he said. Full, sleepy, and a little bit happier. A small laugh escaped her. It was quick. Fragile. But it was real. A warmth bloomed in my chest, unexpected and almost painful. Roger had used to make her laugh like that. In the early years. Before lies. Before late nights. Before Samantha. I pushed the thought away and focused on the now. We talked about small things, school, books, the weather. Walter asked Emily about her favorite stories, and she told him about a fantasy series she loved. He listened, genuinely interested, asking questions that made her open up more and more. Every time she smiled, I felt a piece of the weight on my heart loosen. For the first time since the accident, the world didn't feel entirely gray. When lunch was over, Walter insisted on paying. "You don't have to do that," I said, reaching for my wallet. "I know," he replied. "But I want to. Let me do this one nice thing today. Please." I paused, then nodded. "Thank you," I said quietly. We walked out of the diner together. The sky was overcast, but brighter than it had been that morning. As we reached my house, he parked the car and turned toward me before I could unbuckle my seatbelt. "I'm glad you let me take you both," he said. "You didn't have to trust me. But you did. That means a lot." "You didn't have to be this kind," I answered. "But you were. That means a lot too." He smiled, then took a small breath as if gathering courage. "Okay," he said lightly. "So. Today, I invited you to lunch. Next time. I'd like it to be the other way around." I furrowed my brows. "What do you mean?" "I took care of lunch," he said, his eyes warm. "But one day, when you're ready, I'd like you to invite me for dinner. At your place. Just you and Emily. No pressure. No expectations. Just, 3 people sharing a meal that isn't tied to death." My heart skipped a beat. I blinked slowly, processing his words. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a plea. It was a gentle offer. A possibility. "I'll think about it," I replied. "I'd like that," he said. He stepped out, walked around the car, and opened the door for Emily first. "Thank you for eating with me, Emily," he said, lowering himself to her eye level. "You're very brave. And very smart. Don't forget that, okay?" She nodded shyly. "Thank you, for the pancakes." "You're welcome," he smiled. Then he looked at me one last time. "Remember what I said," he murmured. "If you need anything." "I know," I said, holding up the card in my hand. "I have your number." He gave a small nod, then walked back to his car and drove off. I stood there on the sidewalk for a few seconds, watching the taillights disappear down the street. Something strange stirred inside me. Not love. Not yet. But something like, a door opening, somewhere deep within the house of my heart. A door I thought had been permanently sealed. "Mom." Emily tugged at my sleeve. "Can we go inside?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly. "Let's go." We went into the house, a house still haunted by memories of Roger, but, for the first time, carrying a new one. A man with kind eyes. A quiet lunch. A small laugh over pancakes. I didn't know it yet. But that lunch was just the beginning. The days after the funeral passed in a strange haze, slow, heavy, and disorienting. Grief has a way of bending time, stretching minutes into hours and collapsing whole days into blinks. Even though Roger and I had been separated for months, his sudden death left a strange silence behind, like a door slamming shut in a dark hallway. Some nights I found myself awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering how a person could be so present in your life 1 second, and vanish the next. Other nights I cried quietly into my pillow, not for the husband I lost, but for the man I once believed he could have been. But most of my energy went into helping Emily navigate her grief. She had questions, so many questions. Why did Daddy leave? Did he think about me at the end? Does he still love me? I tried to answer as best I could, though sometimes my voice cracked under the weight of the truth. I told her he loved her. Because despite everything he'd done to me, I believed that part was real. Still, the house felt emptier than ever. The living room echoed with memories. The kitchen felt too quiet. The hallway, once filled with footsteps and laughter, seemed too long, too hollow. It was as if the grief seeped into the walls. And yet, amidst the heaviness, something strange kept happening. I kept thinking about Walter. Not obsessively. Not romantically. But like a steady whisper in the background of my grief. His gentle voice. His kind eyes. The way he had made Emily laugh, truly laugh, for the first time after losing her father. I found myself holding his card one night, turning it over between my fingers while sitting at the kitchen table. The house was dim, the only light coming from the small lamp in the corner. I stared at the numbers printed on the card, debating with myself. Should I call him? Would it be inappropriate? Too soon? Too strange? Too vulnerable? I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even sure I was looking for companionship. But something in me understood that his presence, his calm, grounded energy, had softened the sharpest edges of that horrible day. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to return one small piece of the comfort he had given us. For almost a full week, I resisted the urge. But on Saturday afternoon, as I folded laundry in the living room, Emily walked in holding a small drawing. It was us. Her, me, and a tall man with dark hair, smiling softly. Walter. Do you think you would like it? She asked shyly. My heart tightened. You want to show it to him? I asked gently. She nodded. He was nice, and he talked to me like I wasn't a little kid. That was the moment I understood. Calling him wasn't just my desire. It was something Emily needed too. I wiped my hands on a towel, picked up the phone, and dialed the number. It rang only once. Olivia? His voice. Warm. Surprised. Maybe even pleased. Hi, Walter, I said, suddenly nervous. I hope I'm not bothering you. You're not, he answered softly. Not at all. I'm glad you called. My breath steadied. Well. I wanted to thank you. For the other day. For lunch. For being kind to Emily. Then, gathering my courage, and I'd like to invite you for dinner tomorrow. At my house. There was a pause. But not a hesitant one. More like a breath of relief. I'd be honored, he said simply. The Sunday dinner. Sunday arrived with a calmness I hadn't felt in months. I spent the morning cleaning the house, not because it was messy, but because I was nervous. Nervous in a way I hadn't been since I was much younger. Emily helped set the table. She insisted on wearing a dress she liked. She kept asking when Mr. Walter was arriving. At 1 p.m., the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. I wiped my hands on my apron, smoothed my hair, and opened the door. And there he was, standing on the porch with a bouquet of soft pink roses in one hand and a small wrapped gift in the other. He smiled shyly. "Hi," he said. "These are for you." I blinked in surprise. "No one has brought me flowers in years." "They reminded me of you," he said quietly. "Soft, warm, and stronger than they look." A warmth spread through my chest. "And this," he continued, holding up the small gift, "is for Emily. I hope she likes it." Emily ran to the door, her eyes sparkling. "For me?" she asked. He knelt to her eye level again. "Yes. For you." She tore it open eagerly. Inside was a set of watercolor paints and a small notebook filled with thick, high-quality pages. "For your art," Walter told her. "So you can draw the stories you imagine." Emily threw her arms around him. "Thank you," she squealed. He hugged her back gently. Not too tight. Not too long. Just enough to show sincerity. My eyes stung unexpectedly. "Come in," I whispered. "Please." The meal. We sat at the dining table, just the three of us. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns across the room. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air. Walter complimented the meal. But more importantly, he listened. To Emily's stories. To my hesitant bits of past. To the silence that sometimes fell between us. There was a moment during dinner when Emily excused herself to wash her hands. Walter watched her go, then turned to me with a seriousness I wasn't expecting. "She's extraordinary," he said. "You're raising a truly incredible little girl." Emotion caught in my throat. "Thank you," I whispered. "I'm trying." "You're succeeding," he said. "Even through everything you've endured." I swallowed hard. The weight of that truth pressed into my chest. I wasn't used to being seen. Not like this. Not without judgment or pity. After dinner. After we ate, Emily went to her room to try her new paints. She asked Walter to come look at her drawings later. He promised he would. Walter and I stayed in the dining room, sipping tea. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just thick with things neither of us dared to voice yet. Finally, he broke it. "Olivia," he murmured. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you seem lighter today." I looked at my hands. "I guess it's easier when the house doesn't feel so empty." "I'd like to help with that," he said. My breath hitched. Not because of romance. Not because he was moving too fast. But because the sincerity in his voice wrapped around me like a warm blanket, steady and safe. "You've been through so much," he continued. "More than anyone deserves. And I know you're still hurting. But I want to be someone who brings peace into your life, not more chaos." A tear slid down my cheek. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed to hear that. Walter reached out, not to hold my hand, but to gently place his fingers near mine, close but not touching, giving me room to choose. I closed the distance. Our hands intertwined. My heart didn't race. It didn't flare with fireworks. It simply felt right. Calm. Steady. Safe. Something I hadn't felt in years. When Walter eventually left that afternoon, he hugged Emily goodbye, then turned to me at the door. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "If you need anything, anything at all, I'm here." "I know," I whispered. He stepped onto the porch, paused, then added. "And Olivia, your ex-husband made the biggest mistake of his life when he lost you." I inhaled sharply. He gave a small nod, as if to say, I see your worth, even if he didn't. Then he walked to his car and drove away. I closed the door slowly, pressing my back against it as the quiet house enveloped me. For the first time since the funeral, I felt hope. Not overwhelming. Not dramatic. Just a small spark flickering deep inside my chest. A spark I hadn't felt in years. Walter didn't disappear after that Sunday. He didn't fade away politely, as if our grief had been a temporary charity case. He didn't overwhelm us either. He just stayed present, in the exact measure that felt safe. He checked in with a single message each morning. Hope you and Emily have a peaceful day. He never asked for anything. Never pushed. Never crossed a line. It was strange how his kindness began weaving itself quietly into the corners of our lives. Like sunlight slipping through curtains you forgot to close. Emily started asking about him more often. Do you think Mr. Walter likes my drawings? Will he come over again? Is he your friend now, Mom? Yes. He was my friend. But he was quickly becoming something more than that, something harder to define. A safe place. A calm breath. A warm presence in a house that had been cold for far too long. The memory that broke her. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the funeral, Emily came home from school unusually quiet. Her small backpack hung loosely from her shoulder. Her eyes were red. What happened, sweetheart? I asked. She hesitated, then whispered. Some kid said Daddy didn't want us anymore. That's why he left. The words hit me like a punch. I gathered her into my arms, holding her tightly as she trembled against me. No, baby, I whispered fiercely. Your father loved you. He never stopped loving you. What happened between him and me was not your fault. Do you hear me? Not ever. She sobbed into my chest. It was the kind of pain no child should carry. That evening, after I put her to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and cried silently. For her. For the wounds she had inherited. For the scars she didn't deserve. Without fully understanding why, I reached for my phone and called Walter. He answered on the second ring. Olivia? I couldn't speak at first. The tears were too thick. Hey, he said gently, I'm here. What happened? I finally managed to tell him everything, my voice breaking between sentences. When I finished, there was a long silence on his end. I'm coming over, he said simply. No, Walter, you don't have to, it's late. I'm already in the car. And 20 minutes later, he knocked on my door. The night that changed everything. I opened the door, eyes still swollen. He didn't say a word at first. He simply pulled me into his arms. His embrace wasn't romantic. Not heated. Not hungry. Just strong. Warm. Steady. A shelter. For the first time in months, I let myself collapse into someone's chest. My tears soaked his shirt. My breath shook. My hands clung to him like a lifeline. It's okay, he murmured. You don't have to be strong all the time. Not with me. The words cracked me open entirely. When I finally pulled away, embarrassed, he cupped my cheek gently, not holding, just touching lightly. You're doing an incredible job, he whispered. Emily is grieving, but she's grieving with a mother who loves her more fiercely than anyone. She'll get through this. And so will you. I closed my eyes, letting those words settle into the bruised parts of my heart. We sat on the couch. I made tea. He listened. Really listened. I told him things I hadn't said out loud before. How Roger's betrayal had broken something in me I wasn't sure I could ever fix. How I had spent nights asking myself what I'd done wrong. How the mistress made me feel invisible at the funeral. How guilt and anger and grief twisted together inside me like a thorny vine. Walter never minimized my pain. Never offered empty platitudes. He simply said, "You deserved loyalty. You deserved love. And you still do." Something shifted inside me then. Not a burst of passion. Not a dramatic epiphany. Just a quiet knowing. I was healing. Slowly. Delicately. Carefully. And somehow, Walter had become part of that healing. A new kind of peace. As weeks passed, Sunday dinners became a routine. Some Fridays too. Sometimes Walter brought dessert. Sometimes he brought books for Emily. Sometimes he brought nothing at all except himself, and that was more than enough. Emily adored him. He never tried to replace Roger. He never tried to claim a role he hadn't earned. He simply showed up. Consistently. Kindly. Gently. One Saturday afternoon, the three of us went to a small lake outside town. Emily ran along the water's edge, collecting stones and laughing. Walter and I walked behind her at a slow pace. "Does it ever get easier?" I asked suddenly. "What?" he asked softly. "Letting someone in," I said. "After being hurt." Walter took a breath, looking out at the water. "It doesn't get easier," he said. "But it gets clearer. You learn to recognize who is safe and who isn't. Who wants to hold your heart, and who wants to break it." He paused before adding. "And Olivia, you're learning that I want to hold yours carefully. Not hurt it." My heart thudded once, hard. I wasn't ready to say anything back. Not yet. But I reached out and took his hand. He intertwined his fingers with mine. No rush. No expectations. Just presence. The letter she found. One evening, while reorganizing the closet, I discovered a small, dusty box. Inside were papers, photos, and a letter. It was from Roger. A letter I had never opened. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was messy, rushed. Tears blurred my vision as I read. "Olivia. I know I destroyed the best thing in my life. I know you'll never forgive me. But I want you to know. I was lost. And you deserved better than the man I became. If something ever happens to me, please tell Emily I love her more than anything. And tell her mother. I'm sorry. Roger." I sat on the floor, sobbing. The grief. The anger. The love that had died too soon. The apology that came too late. When Walter arrived that evening, he found me still holding the letter. He knelt beside me silently, giving me time. When I finally looked at him, I whispered. "I don't know how to forgive someone who isn't here anymore." Walter brushed a tear from my cheek, again, gently, leaving me room to step back if I wanted. "You don't need to forgive him today," he said. "Forgiveness isn't a gift to the dead. It's a gift to the living. To yourself. And when you're ready, you'll know." I leaned into him, letting his presence anchor me. That night, for the first time, I fell asleep on the couch with my head resting on his shoulder. The future she never expected. Months passed. The grief softened, though it never disappeared. The anger faded, though scars remained. Emily healed faster than I did. Children often do. Walter's presence became part of our lives, not as a replacement, not as a cure, but as something new. Something steady. Something good. One evening, after dinner, Emily ran to her room to show us a new painting. It was the three of us. Me. Her. And Walter. She had drawn us standing together under a tree, smiling. In the bottom corner, she had written, "My family." I froze. Walter's breath caught. Emily smiled proudly. "This is what we look like now," she said. "Right?" My eyes filled with tears. I looked at Walter. He looked at me. And in that moment, without any dramatic declaration, I felt it. I had gone from feeling abandoned to broken, to surviving, to seen, to cherished. Walter reached out and gently took my hand. "You don't have to say anything," he whispered. "Just know. I'm here. For both of you. For as long as you want me." I exhaled shakily. I didn't feel like Cinderella because a prince had saved me. I felt like Cinderella because I had survived the ashes, and found something beautiful in the aftermath. Love didn't arrive to rescue me. It arrived to walk beside me. And on that quiet evening, as Emily painted and Walter squeezed my hand softly, I realized something profound. I was happy. Truly, deeply, unexpectedly happy. After everything. After the betrayal. After the funeral. After the heartbreak. Walter hadn't replaced my past. He had helped me rebuild my future. And this time, I felt seen. I felt respected. I felt loved. If God allowed it. I wanted this feeling. This peace. This new chapter. For the rest of my life. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more Letters of Life stories.